Hello everyone, and welcome back to Replay, the show where games are art. So, we are back once again to finally do the Opera House, which is one of the most famous parts of this entire game, and deservedly so. It's an absolute masterpiece. Quite probably Nobuo Uematsu's best work as a video game composer. And just absolutely this fantastic set piece. However, looked at from a story level, it might seem like it doesn't have much to do with anything else. I mean, specifically, we've got this complex plot to get a hold of an airship. Setzer has threatened to kidnap Maria. Celes looks like Setzer. So, as Locke is saying, the plan is to have Celes perform in the opera in Maria's place, and then Setzer will kidnap her, and she can get the rest of us on board the airship. Now, this is actually a little complicated to talk about, because we've got a lot of layers going on here. First of all, we have this strange little story within a story that is the whole Celes, Maria, Setzer, Locke complex. The trick by which we snare Setzer that kind of stands entirely by itself, separate from the rest of the game. Other than this being how we get an airship, and this being how we get Setzer, none of this will ever have any bearing on the rest of the game. But there's more to it than that. There's also within that yet another story. There's the story of the opera itself, which is a fairly basic, simple story, strengthened by absolutely spectacular music. And then in amongst all this, we have Ultros showing up and trying his own machinations, which, again, Ultros has nothing to do with the rest of the game. He never has any real bearing on the plot. He just kind of comes out of nowhere and then goes to nowhere. Now, the actual opera. Like I said, this is a masterpiece. This is the SNES music chip being made to do things that it should not be able to do, pushed to the absolute limits, and the result is true art. But the story of the opera is kinda crap, as we're about to see. Also, how's the impresario on stage and in the audience at the same time? That's an impressive trick. Maybe he's an expert. But yeah, the story of this opera is even more basic than like a NES RPG. We've got a war. Out on the front lines, the hero Draco, like they're saying, thinks of Maria. And by the way, if you've ever been to an opera, it's actually fairly common to have these sorts of titles display above the stage. At least when I've been to operas. They're there for people who don't speak the language. They're not subtitles, they don't translate every line, but they give kind of an indicator of what's going on, what the singing character is feeling, that kind of thing. Because opera is very much about emotion. This is true of all musical theater, but opera is kind of the musical theater, so it's kind of most true there. The whole idea of musical theater is that it is a very non-diegetic art form. The music is non-diegetic, just like most of the music in a movie. But that includes the musical numbers. We are not supposed to take it. There's two kinds of music in an opera, two kinds of song. There's arias and recitato. I'm probably mispronouncing that latter one. But recitato is when characters are just talking to each other, communicating with each other. That is diegetic. That is the actual conversation they're having, it's just set to song. Arias, which then evolved into the musical numbers we see in musicals, are not. Duets also often are not. Anything that's not a recitato is going to be non-diegetic. It's a way of showing the audience what the character is feeling, not what's actually happening up on stage. And that's going to be important because it means that we're distinguishing between two... Yeah, while I was talking, I got distracted and had Locke to go the wrong way. Sorry. But like I was saying, it means we're distinguishing between two different kinds of communicating information to the audience, two different kinds of truth. There's the events occurring, what might be called the plain surface layer truth of the story, and then there's the emotional reality that underlies it. And that's an important distinction to make, because while the opera has little or nothing to do with the story of the game on a surface level, on that emotional level, it's very closely tied in. There's a lot of themes that are being revealed here for the first time. For example, Locke is showing a clear attraction to Celes here. And Celes, as we see, she's starting to question, why did he rescue her? Because she's noticing the attraction. And she's worried that she's being used as a substitute for someone else. She's already being a substitute for someone else by being Maria in the opera, but now she's worried that she's a substitute for Locke. She's starting to realize that she's a replacement Rachel for him, and that's not what she wants to be. If she's going to be in a relationship with someone, if she's going to be loved by someone, she wants it to be for her. It wants to be who she is, because who wouldn't want that? Who would want to be a replacement for someone else? But we continue on with a musical number that expresses a very different emotional reality. Remember, we've gone straight from the conversation about Rachel to this, and the very first line, "Oh, my hero, so far away now." Celes, her emotional reality is that love is a fleeting thing. It fades away. Locke isn't interested in her for her. He's interested in Rachel, and that hurts her because the truth is she's interested in Locke. She's attracted to Locke, but he's distant. He's seeing someone else. But we pass on from there. I'm the darkness, you're the stars. Now she's singing about what could be, what she wishes would be, for a permanent love, for a love for her, that she could choose someone and they could choose her. But does she have to give up on that? Does she have to accept that autumn takes the place of spring, that the love she hoped for will never be hers because he's still remembering Rachel, seeing her as a substitute Rachel, just like everybody always sees her as a mirror? Will anyone ever see her, and by anyone we mean Locke, will he ever see her as really her? Or are there only ghosts and illusions to be found? And what she finds at least for now, is that illusions are all there are. So she takes those flowers, a symbol of love, an offering of love, the love that Locke is offering her, and she casts them away. Any second now. She says, this isn't going to work. She has to move on with her life. She needs someone who loves her for her. She can't quite let go of him, but she's going to move on. She's going to walk away. She just wishes that before that, just once, he would mean as much to her, that she would mean as much to him as he means to her. But for now, at least, for now, it cannot be. She could wait forever, but other duties call. Because remember, this is Maria's song, ultimately, not Celeste's. For all the feelings that she expresses here, she'll go and dance with Ralts. She'll go and dance with Setzer. She'll do what has to be done. And in the end, that's all there is. Now, I want you to note, there's been a very orderly structure to this. And now we pass into this extremely orderly dance. Look at how everyone is dancing in exactly the same way. You know, we had that classic, the East and Western War, the Lost Love, all that stuff. But it's really a very simple 3-act structure of first we introduce the conflict, the war, the separation between Draco and Maria. Then we have the second act, where the conflict intensifies, where we reach the depths of the problem, where now Maria has given up on Draco. Maria has to marry Rouse. And now we're entering the third act, and note that this is symbolized again by this very orderly dance. I'm pretty sure this is a waltz, musically, and certainly their dance is synchronized and organized. But here is where chaos erupts, both in the music, in the story, as the survivors of the West return, bringing us into the third act, and as we'll see in a moment, we've got some extra diegetic chaos being introduced as well. Extra diegetic within the context of this opera, not within the game. And Draco returns. It took me years to figure out that Ross and Draco are supposed to be singing that line together, about for the rest of my life. It always confused me that Ross was still in the singing pose while Draco was singing. But I think that's what's going on. Anyway, here's our extra diegetic force of chaos, Ultros, introducing this complete cartoon ridiculousness that he's going to drop this weight. He even knows exactly how long it's going to take him. So actually, that extra diegetic chaos isn't just extra diegetic in terms of the opera, it's the game too. He knows what the timer reads. So, off to Celeste's rescue. Now, you'll notice here, we are playing with some themes that have been in the game already so far, specifically order versus chaos, in terms of the structure of the opera, the introduction of chaos here, and also in terms of how, since the West has been defeated and Prince Rulce in the East now rules, this survivors of the West attacking sounds suspiciously like the rebellion of a conquered land, which is cool. So yeah, we've got a time limit, but it's relatively easy, particularly with this party who have a lot of attack all abilities. It's pretty easy, as long as you don't try to fight every rat. Alright, are rats healed or hurt by poison? They're healed. Well, fire will hurt them, I'm pretty sure. Does that rat have regen? Stealing is a little slow. I might want to not do that every time. I don't know. If I start running low on time. The music here is so fantastic. And unless I'm much mistaken, once the opera starts, none of this music is ever used again in the rest of the game. This is the one track I'm not sure about. I think this might be used in another timered sequence, but I can't remember for sure. But certainly, all the music of the opera itself up to this point, obviously, Aria di Mezza Carretera, which is Celes's big song, is a variation of Celes's theme. But other than that, that variation is never used anywhere else. Oh, I forgot. If you don't kill the gold ones, the other ones can come back. Okay, timer's starting to be a bit of a pain. But anyway, it's not, like, except for maybe this track, which I'm not even sure about. Everything else between here and Setzer showing up is unique. Everything from the beginning of the opera. The music of the opera house itself is used in a couple different places. Oh good, there's only one more. And I bypassed it. Alright, there's about to be a boss fight, so let me make sure everybody's all healed up and everything. Alright. Okay. It's actually worth it to try to learn Cure just in case. So, we've got this kind of overlap between the diegetic and the extra-diegetic here. Ultros is good at doing that. Comic relief characters often are, especially in Japanese stuff. There's a lot of comedic fourth wall breakage in, like, anime and video games. It's just sort of a thing. There we go. Just in case I need it during the boss fight. And, of course, this means I have to tonic up again. Okay. Now we can do this. And so, like I was saying, we have this kind of overlap, and now the extra diegetic is interfering with the diegetic. We had them kind of going along with each other when we had the music for the fight sequence going along with our timer sequence. The fight sequence between Rulce and Draco. Now, though, it's the other way around. The extra diegetic has intruded into the diegetic and disrupted it utterly. Fortunately, Locke is here to save the day, and here's more evidence that when Maria is singing about Draco, it is, at least to an extent, Celeste singing about Locke. Locke jumps in and says he'll save her. Now, then Ultros decides he wants in on this ridiculousness. And what the heck? Let's all go with it. And have the best boss battle music in the game. This is just ridiculous. We've gone from this serious operatic music, very dramatic, to, frankly, a polka. I'm pretty sure this qualifies as a polka. And it's absurd, and I kind of love it. That this is what this has become. This is what it has collapsed into, is this comedic monster. Ah, that's interesting, isn't it? This force of chaos that intrudes from nowhere, and it's a funny monster. In a game where we've got a significant villain who dresses like a clown, that's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because I'm going to give away the game now, in case I didn't already with the title, or frankly, the fact that I've matched Celeste throwing the flowers with Celeste throwing herself off a cliff in the opening of every episode of this series. This opera is a microcosm of the game as a whole. But I mean something very specific when I say this opera, because this opera is not the thing that unfolds on the stage of the opera house. That, frankly, isn't ridiculous enough. Operas tend to have incredibly melodramatic stories. Actually, I'm going to shut up for a minute because Setzer's theme is amazing, and I love the implication that the orchestra at the opera house knows it and plays it for him when he appears. But anyway. I love that Celeste acts like the prisoner and then winks at the audience. Again, we're playing a lot with crossing that fourth wall here. But like I was saying, the opera that unfolds on stage, while the music is spectacular, the story is not very operatic. It's too simple. It's not melodramatic enough. None of the characters have weird relationships with other characters that are revealed partway through. You know? The operas I'm used to, they'll have reveals like, you know, everybody is cheating with everybody else in a comic opera. Or, you know, in Wagner, where the lovers turn out to be brother and sister. So yeah, Setzer is totally uninterested in us. We have to flatter him. You know, we give him flattery, we offer him rewards. But he has no idea if he's going to help. He's going to gamble. Everything comes down, in the end, to chance. Which is to say, this whole little chunk of story ends with everything coming down to randomness, to chaos. Setzer's been made rich by the Empire. Wealth and order go hand in hand, as we've discussed before. But now the party members are convincing him the Empire is evil. The Empire is oppressive. This order must be broken. And as a gambler, that appeals to him. So, he still wants Celeste/Maria. But Celeste is very smart. Celes decides to trust in chaos. She borrows a coin from Edgar, does a coin toss. Except for this is where things get fun. This is why I wanted Edgar and Sabin in my party. Because if you don't have them in your party, don't have both of them in your party, then she just borrows the coin from someone, tosses it. The whole fate of the world comes down to this coin. Except remember, Celes is ice, Celes is cold, Celes is heaven, Celes is order. She was never trusting in chaos at all. She was cheating. And that one line, I absolutely love, and it only happens if you have both Edgar and Sabin, as Sabin suddenly realizes that the coin Celes just flipped is the same one that settled the fate of Figaro. That Edgar never left it to chance either. He just wanted an excuse to allow both brothers to pursue what they really wanted to do instead of what their father ordered them to do. In both cases, it's a pretense of chaos that nonetheless allows defiance of an oppressive order. It's a very strange and interesting little twist that, again, is foreshadowing things to come, because ultimately, this game is not going to be about chaos is better than order. It's going to be about finding a balance between the two. It's just that in the world of balance in which we start the game, the world of order, that's been disrupted. So getting back to what I was talking about, we've now reached the end of this segment, the opera. Absolutely stunning, but really quite short. Not even a half hour long. But here's the thing I wanted to talk about. The opera on stage is too simplistic to be a real opera. It doesn't have those weird relationships, those reversals, those melodramatic elements. But the opera house sequence as a whole has two completely unrelated people, Maria and Celes, who look exactly the same. It has a dashing gambler who wants to kidnap Maria, is tricked into kidnapping Celes instead, and then decides that Celes is the one he actually wants. It has two brothers, it once heirs to the throne, with a secret about how that came to be, namely the coin. It has a ridiculous octopus screwing things up for no reason. It is a ridiculous, overblown story. It's got the blossoming love story between Celes and Locke, the nobody thief with the lost love, and the hard renegade general. I mean, there's so much melodrama here, so much intensity of emotion involved, and then it all plunges into ridiculousness as well. That's operatic. That's the kind of thing I expect to see in an opera. So this story as a whole is the opera. Everything from finding out about Maria to now going to the Empire is the opera. And it's a good one. It's got great music. It's got a ridiculous, convoluted plot. It's about as good of an opera as you can do in half an hour. So, given all of that, what does it have to do with the rest of the game? And like I said, we need to look at the emotions it contains. Which is, we start with a conflict, a fairly standard one, a war. The war between West and East on stage. The war between the Returners and the Empire in the larger story. We then move into despair, failure, people separated from one another. Maria and Draco. Well, guess what? This party is going to be torn apart. They're going to fail. They're going to be torn away from each other. And Celes is going to be left alone. And she is going to try to cast everything away. I am convinced that it is not an accident that her arc, when she jumps off the cliff, the beginning of the World of Ruin, is almost identical to the arc of the flowers when she throws them in the opera house. That the two arcs converge. And the reason I'm convinced it's not accidental is that the camera moves when Celes jumps off the cliff so that her arc can intersect the flowers. I don't see any other reason why they would have the camera move that way. So, not to mention the similarity in music that plays in those scenes. And the similarity of emotion. They're both scenes about despair, about giving up on ever getting to connect with the people you want to connect with. And then we move on from there. Well, in the opera, we have Locke falling out of the sky. In the story of the game as a whole, we have the bird that's been healed with Locke's bandana, that's had its wing helped with Locke's bandana, that tells Celes that he's still alive. That's where we're really going with all this. That's the story of the game. Is, it gets interrupted, the opera. We never get to see the end. But the truth is, the end is Setzer swooping in and everybody flying off in their airship. That's the end of the game. That's the whole story of the game playing out in that opera. So now we need to really look at those themes and what they say about the game as a whole. Sorry, distracted for a moment. You may have noticed in the background here we've got one of the towns occupied by the Empire. Soldiers everywhere. It's very difficult for the people who actually live in this town. But that's life under Empire. That's what happens to you. Anyway, we'll be learning more about that base to the east. So, let's look at some of the themes in the opera and how they reflect in the larger game. So, we've got Ultros interfering. He also falls down out of the sky, just as, Kefka's Light of Judgment will. Just as Kefka will fall down out of the sky and rain chaos and destruction across the world. More or less. The falling out of the sky part is a little bit of a stretch, but he is up in the sky when he triggers it. So, again, you've got that order, chaos, balance thing, because we have to defeat Ultros, and we get some awesome music while we're doing it. That's going to happen too. Kefka's theme, which is at once comedic and terrifying, as we've discussed, gets pretty heavily jazzed up for the fight with him, and it's pretty cool. I'd note that also the boss fight with him, and this is, I'll admit, a bit of a stretch, is 4 tiers, each with their own theme, and, prior to the interruption, there are 4 parts to the opera. The opening, Celes's theme, Aria de Mezza Carretera, the panic stuff, and then Battle with Ultros. Again, that one's a bit of a stretch, but we've stretched farther for some things. The point is, there's a lot of resonance going on between that one little half-hour chunk of game and the rest of the game as a whole. And as we'll see next time, that really serves well as an introduction to the Empire. You know, now we get into increasing complexity. We get into, well, it's not as simple as that continent, that empire is evil, because as we just saw, significant portions of the empire are conquered. They're not participating in the destruction and whatnot. There's the capital, but I'm not ready to go there yet. You know, they're not directly participating. They're not willing participants any more than Celes is now, or Terra was. They're controlled and forced. And we've also got a mounting theme of love, and the game will be exploring some different kinds of love and different, you know, approaches to love in its second half. It's going to become a major character motivation for Terra as we go along. We've already seen bits of that, and it will increase more so. And we'll be seeing what love can bring into the world. And Celes will be a very important character for that exploration, because really the big love story of the game is Celes and Locke. It's Locke learning to see Celes rather than Rachel, and to let go of his saving people thing. And it's Celes learning to let herself be loved, which will happen in the world of, at the beginning of the world of Ruin, and continue from there. It's being willing to accept the impermanence of it, willing to let go of people if necessary, and to accept people, knowing that she might have to let them go. Terra's challenge is discovering that she's worthy of love. Celeste's challenge is discovering that the impermanence of love, that impermanent things can have value, love included. You know, it's letting go of ice, of solidity, of control. All that said, I think I'm going to end here. We'll continue next time with the exploration of the Empire. See you all then.